Hello, you join me inside the new Range Rover Velar, the fourth, newest and, apparently, most dynamic of all Range Rovers. So where does it sit? So you've got the Evoque range at the bottom, then Range Rover Sport, then Range Rover Proper. This sits between the Evoque and the Range Rover Sport in terms of price, kind of in terms of size, and in terms of what it is. It is an all aluminium, mostly aluminium, not all aluminium, mostly aluminium platform. If that sounds familiar, it is. Think of it as Land Rover's take on an F-Pace, if you like. It's mostly aluminium. There's a little bit of magnesium at the front. There's a little bit of steel at the back. That helps the weight distribution. And instead of being the big, beefy off-roader, fundamentally, it is a slightly less heavy-duty car than a Range Rover Sport or the full-size Range Rover. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means it weighs just about less than 2 tons, regardless of the engine, of which there are 6. So, 2 diesels of 4 cylinders, 180 and 240 horsepower, plus a 300 horsepower V6 diesel. And then there is a 250 brake horsepower 4-cylinder petrol plus 2 V6 petrols, of which this is the faster. There's 300 and 380 brake. So this is the full fat 380 brake bomb. But what is it like? Well, fundamentally, it feels quite Range Rover-y. You know, it does things the way you would hope a Range Rover would. The steering's very light, very slick. Gearbox response is pretty good, actually, especially on this petrol, but even in the diesel, it is responsive at low revs. It gets on. Neither of them feels quite as quick as the headline figure suggests. This is supposed to be a 5-point-something second car to 60 miles an hour. Quite often, JLR products don't necessarily feel quite as quick as the headline figures suggest they should do. They will do those times because we've tested them on test tracks and they will record those times, but it is a time that it can do, not necessarily one that it feels like it will do every time. The V6s come on air springs. 4 cylinders get coils with air as an option. Either way, this is the kind of car that looks good on big, big wheels. This is on 22s, 22-inch wheels, and that is enormous, isn't it? Despite that, the ride is pretty good most of the time. Around town, just when you're going slowly, if you hit a large pothole, it can really thump into the cabin. But most of the time, the ride's really controlled. There are drive modes, so you can stiffen up the dampers if you want to. I don't think you'll want to. You can firm up the steering. I don't think you need to. Fundamentally, this car feels like a Range Rover to drive. And the four-wheel drive system feels like Jaguar's one, in that fundamentally, it's kind of a rear-wheel drive car which puts power to the front via a chain drive, oddly, as and when you need it, rather than it being or feeling 50-50 nose-heavy four-wheel drive. Elsewhere, well, that kind of F-Pace architecture that it uses shows through, really. It's relatively agile, but I don't think it is as agile or as poised or as sporty. You don't get quite as much back as you do in, say, a Porsche Macan. That's maybe not a great surprise, but it's close to it, and it's closer to it than any other Range Rover. And it will do more off-road than, well, I'm sure than the Macan does. Not as much as the big Range Rovers, obviously. The towing limit is 2.5 tons. The way depth is less, and there's no low ratio and stuff, but it's got the full gamut of electronic off-road aids, and it is as good off-road as I suspect you will want it to be. And it's quite plush inside, isn't it? Well, it is to look at. I mean, it's really funky to look at, actually. It's got 3 all-digital screens. It's got one down here by my knees. It's got one there. These 2 are both touch screens. And then it's got a full digital dash stack in the middle. I used to love a touch screen. As time goes on, I'm slightly erring towards favouring a car like a BMW or an Audi, which has actually a handle down here, a rotary knob and some extra buttons, because you don't have to take your eyes off the road for a long time to use a touchscreen that is down by your knees. But graphically, it's very good. It is fairly easy to use. It is fairly straightforward, and it does look cool. It's got a very big boot at the expense of some rear passenger accommodation. If you start to prod a bit deeper, if you start to prod some of the plastics, you find that some of them are a little bit more brittle and a little bit less solid than you might expect for a car that starts at £44,000 in the UK. But don't be fooled by that 44 grand, because that gets you the base diesel with nothing on it. all right? The next highest car up the range is at least 50,000 quid. And this car goes up to 70-odd thousand pounds, 80,000 pounds in a launch edition, which this one is. So the meat of the range is 60 grand. So that is not a cheap car, is it? 60,000 quid, I reckon. And that's kind of the base price. So by the time you've got options added on, people do like an option. Might end up being quite a lot more than that. But by and large, I think the Velar is probably the car that Range Rover wanted it to be. I think it's as good as it needs to be. I'm not blown away by it, but I think it is as good as it needs to be. And it's good enough for the people who go, crikey, will you just look at that? I really want one. I think they'll try it and go, yep, that is good enough for me. I think it will sell in large quantities.